Hi guys, time to talk about the topic of topics. This is going to be a longer video because I really want to flesh it out and explain this. Topic of topics is a reference to Don Juan, or should I say Carlos Castaneda, in his series where he talks about the Mexican sorcerers and his apprenticeship with them. And at a certain point, Don Juan said, hey, you're ready to learn about the flyers. Don Juan says the flyers are a parasitic species from the deepest recesses of the cosmos that came and took us over. They took over our consciousness, or rather, they put a foreign installation as a layer over us. And it's almost like we have an operating system which we think is us and we identify with, but it's foreign. It's there to serve to ensure that that this installation elicits the psychic energy, a harvest in which they can feed off. Yes, the idea is that humans are not at the top of the food chain, and even if you're reading Gurdjieff's work, now you have to be very careful with this work because it's incomplete, and I would recommend Moraviev's work. But one thing Gurdjieff does talk about is this same ideas as you reach up in the levels or the hierarchy of existence, not necessarily physical now, it becomes food as consciousness. So for me personally, I read this many years ago, and it was eerie. I don't know why. It's a bit like the Matrix movie. There was something that just kind of struck me. Anyway, I guess when I was ready, and this would maybe have been 8 years ago now, I started to explore this. I started to test it out and see if I could sort of verify this. It's tricky to talk about in a way because I don't know who's ready for this. And if I'm really honest, when I started to play with this and consider and reflect and sort of experiment within my own processes and in my own reality, it was crazy making, to be honest. It was a very scary time for me. It was definitely a scary time. And that's why I feel, I guess, a certain amount of caution with it. But my role here, whilst I'm alive in the world, is just to leave my experiences, because what I found was, as I went into this path that had no real equal in so much of the New Age and so much of the so-called awakening, there was no reference, no talk, all feel good, peace, love, light. It was this very refined synchronicity that somehow led me to, videos with 20 views, or some bizarre, like Tom Montalk, or Hidden Forces of Life, 3 Aurobindo, Bernard Gunter. Some people refer to this as fringe knowledge, Moraviev. And what I realize is when someone's ready, they will find this kind of fringe information which I'm talking about now. And because I don't promote my channel, I mean, even this video is a long one, so automatically people are going to swipe, and that's okay, because in fact it's probably good that people swipe, because people are not ready for this. And what I would say is, if there is truth in this idea that we have a foreign installation, and as Don Juan says, the secret is for us to believe that it doesn't exist. That's the trick, that's the magic, that's the continuation. And like the biggest trick the devil played was to get people to believe that the devil doesn't exist. It's the same sort of thing as that. So, and as I said, I because this is not a promoted channel, and it is for people who are really, I do what I do here for 1 or 2 souls. That's it, because it saved me. The fact that I was having this inner experience that had no equal in all of this so-called awakening thing. This is why I do what I do, for those souls who are really ready. Yes. So basically the topic of topics is about this foreign installation. And I think it's very normal. Like, we take a lot of responsibility. We think all things coming from us are us. And what I've come to realize is that our consciousness is a bit more like a cloud, in that we can have that which is pure from source, that is creative, that is us and linked to the divineness. So in other words, we can be truly, purely creative. And there are things we think and feel that are us. But what I discovered in my own journey was this otherness. And I even got a sense, I've had this sense for some time, that I don't know if you can relate to that feeling that, when you're down, when it rains, it pours, and sometimes it almost feels like you're being attacked. And often we go, I'm attacking myself. But I've come to realize that that may not be the case. That what Don Juan talks about is that he says that as children, we have this kind of ball of energy that is kind of a protective ball. And he suggests that as we grow in life and as the flyers do their work, that ball, globe, so to speak, that surrounds us ends up around our ankles. And what the flyers do is they tweak and tinker in order to just flicker the psychic energy from the remnant psychic energy we have left, because we've lost so much of our psychic energy. It's just flicked and they feed on that. But one thing they can never do is allow for the sphere to return. And this is what awakening is when one actually returns to that full embodiment. And people talk about enlightenment and awakening. And to put it simply, I describe it, and there's many ways to describe it, is simply one's ability to protect their energy, to protect their psychic energy from being fed on. And to me, that is awakening. That is enlightenment. I don't like that word. I mean, I get into the point I don't even like the word awake, because it's understood in a belief sense by most people. And that's just go to church, what's the difference? Most people don't realize that believing is very handy, it's helpful, it gives us a place, it gives us a certain stability and a kind of narrative within our everyday life. But it's extremely limited. I was a church minister for many years, and so I lived to the fullest of what it meant to believe. But on this path of Gnosis, and the cornerstone of that was realizing I was being violated by this otherness. Let's just call it that, or the flyers. This is what really helped me to wake up. And I think also what happened was when I began to see that there was an agenda, that there was a force that knew me better than I knew myself, and therefore could tinker and play and manipulate and all these kind of things. I think what occurred, what was really interesting, was it gave me motivation. When I understood I'm being violated, then it's war. And it was that kind of warrior war thing that got me to where I got to, which was crossing the river, so to speak, or completing that. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't end. It's not like I'm bliss every day. Like, if I'm really honest, recently, it's every day. Every single day, I encounter thoughts and feelings that don't belong to me. And it's only when I identify with them that the damage gets done. And again, it's a very advanced skill that I'm talking about here, because how does one be true and honest with their feelings and their thoughts, and be real with that? But how does one also become aware that some of this is just in the cloud? That the idea that there's a force or a principle or a flyer that knows you better than you know yourself and is hiding, lurking, and keeping you pinned down. I also think about, and I've mentioned this in the other video, I think about the devil principle, also referred to as the accuser, the eternal accuser. And as I said, I still, it's a daily challenge, I must say, because even for me, there are, I guess, vulnerabilities, there's traumas I've had in the past, and even on some of the refined aspects of my personality and my soul, even I get a bit tricked. I can be quite down on myself, if that makes sense. And so it's easy to sometimes not realize that there are forces at work to amplify and take advantage, and they're working 24/7 because they have to feed. I mean, as Don Juan says, he says their biggest fear is being found out, because it's the fear of denial of food. And I think the accuser principle is just a very big deal for me, because, as I said, through my music, I made a number of mistakes recently, and it wasn't like a healthy kind of guilt. I messed up, I need to change. There was a shame in it, and it was relentless. And it was like just an otherness seeking a feed off me, and it won for a while, I gotta be honest. And I'm very grateful for the mistakes I made, to be honest, because this is obviously an area that I need to keep learning to let go. And I think that's the other thing too, because look, let me give you an example. And maybe it's not a great example, but it was a very significant moment for me. When I was considering the idea that, maybe not all of the thoughts and feelings that come through are coming from us. It's when we identify with them that the damage begins and the harvest of our psychic energy begins. So anyway, I was thinking to myself, and this is a fairly everyday thing, I've had a tendency to feel sorry for myself. And I was having a bout of this around about the time of considering all of these things. And I thought, well, let's test this out. So I thought, and I looked at what Don Juan said. He said, the only way is discipline. And it's, what we get taught so on, oh, that's negative, let's replace it with a positive, let's do an affirmation. What I did was detach, because it's the moment you identify, I know we're getting a little bit Buddhist, but there's these kind of interrelationships with some of these teachings. And I have to tell you, it was the most intense inner struggle. It was, look, I can't perceive. I've not perceived. I don't have this clairvoyance. But I have that sense, if that makes sense. It was insane. I mean, it was confirmed for me, because I'm like, this is just insane. This is not me. There is something that does not want me to let go and not identify with self-pity. And again, I've talked about this a lot. As one awakens or grows, you reach a level of advanced skill, and that means things are not always just black or white. What that means in this case is that it is good to be able to have compassion for yourself and love for yourself. And it's very healthy to have guilt, because without it, we can really fly off the rail. It's God-given, and it's what helps us when we do commit an offense to be able to change and apologize and these kind of things. It's a God-given thing. But there's another side to guilt, and even with shame, and I'm not getting too much into the whole family sort of stuff, even though that does really tie in with this as well for me. It's been for me learning the ability to know when to really be able to feel bad and make those changes, and other times where I'm having feelings or thoughts that are injected, and at that point it's the letting go. But I call it a warrior path, because it takes everything of a man. I have to, even now after all these years, what I've just been through for the last few weeks, goodness me. And I'm elated, I'm so joyful, because what I've realized is it's awesome, because this is something that I really want to continue to improve on. And it's kind of, I don't know how to say, because you think you're there and you've dealt with all these things, but this otherness has a way of sort of trying to get in the back door. Or so this is pretty much the topic of topics. And like I said, it really, I guess the reason why I feel, a certain amount of distance from a lot of the groups and a lot of the things I read and all of that, is that there's no discussion on this. And the idea of waking up without a grasp of this is completely ridiculous. There may be some individuals that have certain protections that I may not know much about, and I'm very happy for you. But this idea, it's the otherness, the idea that not in the physical, that we are fed on. And I often see people, they have a tendency, it's my fault, like, oh, I'm so useless, I keep struggling with this. Now, I understand that, and sometimes we are a bit bloody useless, we need to improve on some things. But when I began to consider that it ain't just my weakness, I am being screwed with, that changed the game for me. That changed the game for me because I had a situation, in fact. Now, my cousin, she's not really into all of this, and I was very surprised because she was able to receive the information I gave her. Now, my auntie, her mother passed away some years ago, and she has these bouts of grief, obviously. And I just said to her, I said, look, and I didn't get too into the flyers or anything like that. I just talked about this idea that sometimes I feel down and it's legitimate and I cry and it's beautiful and it's healthy. But there's other times where it almost seems like its own beast. That it's almost, I don't know if you can relate to that, you're just down and it's, and this is what I'm trying to get at. And I'm not, I said in the last video, I'm not here to get you to believe anything. I'm simply here to, for those who are ready, even, I don't know about being ready, I don't know who's ready for this information. But I just wanted to know the truth with all my heart, mind, soul and strength. And I wanted to be happy. And this is where my path led. And I think it's been very hard coming to terms with how much of a weirdo I am. And how much I can't say. And my inability to relate to this, so much of this so-called, wake up, enlightenment, all of that stuff. I didn't plan for this. I'm not trying to be cool and I'm not trying to be individual. I'm not, I'm pretty outspoken and I can be controversial and I can push buttons. I know that, but this was not the plan. This has been a path that my Heavenly Parent has sent me on. And so I think maybe I'll leave it there. I just felt with the small videos, it was all a bit, clicky, snap, short and that. And I felt if I made a video like this, I could flesh it out a bit for you. I don't know what else to say other than that because it's a very personal thing. And it's a little bit like I talked about NPCs, non-player characters, or the idea that there's a lot of beings on this planet that have the animalistic centers, but they don't have the higher centers, so they mimic. And they acted so that they don't stand out. And that's a very potentially dangerous idea because the way one can easily judge from this is very similar. This is, I think one of the things I felt the most when I went through all of this process and started to experience this otherness that was set on eating my energy. I've lost my train of thought. It has been a long day. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave it there. Anyway, look, I hope this helps. And yeah, it's gone. Yeah. All right. Well, look, have a fantastic week. And yeah, I'll be in touch soon.